Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Helen Caldwell and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar for the Let's Teach Computing MOOC. And this week our theme is to do with developing primary computing skills. And I'd like to welcome some teachers and educators who are from the Northampton area to talk about developing primary programming. So, shall we introduce ourselves? James, would you like to say a little bit about what your role is with teaching computing?
Okay, I'm the head of computing in Spratton Hall School, which is just north of Northampton. I teach computing to reception right the way up to year 8.
Thank you. And I see we've got Claire. Claire's joined us as well. Welcome, Claire. You managed to get in at the last minute. Are you there, Claire?
Yep. Hi. Yes,
Hi.
I did get in the last minute. A little confused.
So we're just introducing ourselves. Do you want to say who you are and where you're from?
I'm Claire Fennick. I'm based at Oxford University. I'm senior lecturer in education for computing, and I'm part of the team that put the MOOC together.
Okay, thank you. And Kim?
Yeah, I currently teach at Billingbrook School, which is a special needs school in Northampton, and I lead computing in the school, and I teach a year 5-6 class and sort of do a little bit of computing teaching.
I'm based at Oxford University. I'm senior lecturer in education for computing.
Can you hear Claire talking? Just a minute.
Yeah.
Did you hear Claire talking there?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Kim. It's good to have your perspective.
Someone's got lag.
We have, haven't we? Have rid of that. Well, we'll see if it goes away. Okay. All right, let's move on to Neil then. Neil, hello.
Hello. I'm a lecturer in. Ooh, that's a strange echo.
It is, isn't it? I wonder whether we need to try putting headphones on to get rid of the echo. I'm going to try my headphones.
You could also mute your microphones. If.
Did you hear Claire talking there?
Yeah. Anyway, my name is Neil Smith. I'm a lecturer in computing at the Open University. I don't teach programming in schools, but I have been doing a fair bit of work with CoClub since they started. I run a CoClub, which is years 5 and 6, teaching them programming, and I've recently worked with Helen teaching some master teachers, so people who can deliver CPD, both primary and secondary teachers.
Oh, and here's Wayne. Hello, Wayne. Can I just check you can all still hear me because I've put my headphones on? Can you hear me? You can. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Hi, Wayne. We're just introducing ourselves. So we're up to Stacey.
I'm Stacey Ram. I teach at Bridgewater Primary School in Northampton. I'm a year 5 teacher and I lead computing and ICT in the school, and currently training with Helen and Neil to be a CAS master teacher.
Thank you, Stacey. And Sway.
Hello. I've come outside because my children are like.
Wait a minute. All right, we'll speak to Wayne. So Wayne's there. Wayne is outside.
I've gone outside because my children will be a pain otherwise.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So Wayne, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I teach at Stanisborough Primary School. We have been. I've been the computer coordinator for just this year, really, and we are in a transitional period where we have teachers who lack confidence, and now they've got a lot more confidence. Now they realise that computing is not that scary, really. So that's where we are.
That's good. And I was in your classroom last week, and it didn't look scary at all. They were really well, weren't they?
Yeah. The children have got more confidence than most of the teachers, to be fair. So.
Yeah, very, very confident children. Okay, so let's come back to the last one then. So we've got Sway here as well, haven't we? Hi, Sway.
Yeah. I'm a primary school teacher from Milton Keynes, and I also am a specialist leader in education for computing and ICT in the sort of Milton Keynes area.
Thank you. Okay, so far in our MOOC we've been thinking mainly about, well, the last 2 weeks at least, we've been thinking about primary computing and teaching computing skills, computational thinking and beginning programming. I wonder if you could perhaps all tell us what's just a little bit about your journey so far. Where are your children? What things have worked particularly well for you? And what would you really, if you're going to recommend something to somebody else, what would you recommend as a really good starting point for teaching computational thinking and programming skills in primary schools? So if we come back to Claire.
I don't know whether it's appropriate for me. I'm working with trainee teachers, and I would say they're beginning on their journey more than anything else.
And what kind of things do you use with your trainee teachers? What do you want them to take into schools?
I want them to take enthusiasm more than anything else, and the concepts. I think the underlying concepts are what I'm particularly keen on them taking with them, rather than any sort of specific sort of apps or anything like that. But I'm new at Oxford Brookes, and as I say, we are beginning our journey.
So it's an enthusiasm for computational thinking skills then?
Yes, and an aspiration, you know, to use it enthusiastically across the curriculum, really.
Yeah, that sounds good. James is next on our little line. Yeah. So you've been doing computing for some time, haven't you, James?
A little while, yeah.
Where would you recommend people should start?
Well, we start with playing games, because I do kind of think that's where the subject probably got its most traction. So I play a lot of games with the youngest children, and then start on the line of, well, how can I hack this game? How can I modify this game? I guess it's because for me computing is quite creative and mostly about messing around with stuff.
So we're talking about online games and games that programmable games.
Yeah, programmable games. Anything where you can have a mess around with it and change the outcome.
So do you do a lot of Scratch game programming? Do you?
Yeah, we use children. It's a lot of Scratch Junior. We play a few games like Cargo Bot, Daisy the Dinosaur. Just anything where you can throw instructions and play about, really.
And actually, Stacey, you were doing your children were making games last week, weren't they? Do you want to just tell us what you're using for that?
So we did something similar where they could explore different apps and different sort of websites to program. So we had a bit of an exploration with Scratch and Scratch Junior, and something that Wayne had recommended called GamePress.
That looked really good.
Yeah, and so from there they could make free choice about where they wanted to program. So that's what they've been doing the last couple of weeks.
So GamePress was perhaps a little easier than Scratch, was it, to get started with?
A little bit. They're finding it quite tricky actually, because there's a lot. It's not as simple, and the language is a bit more complex, and it's a lot more reading the instructions to find out exactly what it does, which they've sort of had to build up that independence to have a go and just to see if it works or not. It's a little bit more, it doesn't run as smoothly as Scratch, so they've had to do a lot of debugging and work out why something wasn't working.
So you gave your class a choice between GamePress and Scratch, didn't you?
Yeah, and Scratch Junior, just so that they could see what that looked like as well.
But when I saw them, they were all really into their game making.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they planned it first, hadn't they, on paper? That was quite interesting.
Yeah, so throughout the process when we were exploring, we wrote we called them game developer diaries, so that they could evaluate each app and sort of say what they thought was good about it and what they didn't like about it and how they would use it, and then they use that research to then choose their final product, and then they planned their game. We done a filmmaking module last term, and they took the storyboarding from that and then applied it to their game making.
So lots of work away from the computer before you started working on it. Yeah. So if we come back to James, does that sound similar? Is that a similar approach to what you've been doing with your games?
Yeah, although I'm interested by that idea of making a diary, because with the children I get them to do paper prototypes and video themselves, sort of playing the game. So they describe the interactions and move bits of paper around, and that helps them really think about how their game might operate, how their environment might work.
So thinking it through on paper.
Mm.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so move on to Kim then. Kim, you're working with in a special school, aren't you?
I am, yes. Yeah. So we do quite a bit of unplugged activities. We were looking at something that came up with the Teach Your Robot. So what I'm going to do with them is to get them to teach their robot to dance.
Was that the Dr. Technico thing?
Yeah. So
yeah.
I've got lots of different cards for different dance moves, and I want them to sort of plan out what they're going to do to teach their robot to do it. So get them to write down the algorithm for that, and then test it on swapping partners and things, and testing that on there.
So they're being robots. They're taking turns at being robots. Yeah, that sounds good.
One of them has to train their robot. So one of them is the robot, and the other one's the trainer.
And have you made the symbols? Have you made symbols for it?
Yes. I've made them through communication print.
Oh, that sounds good. So they're symbols they're familiar with already from communication and print.
So it's what they're familiar with and just expanding on that.
So have you got any plans to take that idea and make it on the computer as well? Would you extend it and do things on the computer?
I think I'll see how it goes practically and then take it from there, really, see where I can go next. But I do want to use, I know I spoke to some of you in our last meeting about the games, the next level of a maze game that they were creating. So I'm going to use the J2 code to help them do that on the computer.
Yes. Yeah, we found the very early stages of J2 code had some really nice ways of making. So with J2 code, you can see you can make your character move and then see the code, can't you? Which is the opposite way around from what
which is a good way for them.
Yeah.
Sort of get into it.
Yeah, and the other one I suppose is 2DIY on the Too Simple Purple Mash website.
Yeah, which I need to look into a bit more.
Okay, thank you. So Neil, are you into games as well?
Most of the stuff I've been doing actually with children is with Code Club, and a lot of that is based around games. And so they follow the instructions, they build the game, and they're invited, and depending on what mood I'm in, persuaded to extend it and make changes to it and modify it and try stuff out with it. So there's an idea that it's not just following the instructions, there is something about taking control and hacking their game, as was mentioned before, to make it their own.
And the Code Club materials do seem to always move in the direction of becoming more open-ended as you work through them. Is that? Yeah. I believe you were involved in writing the Code Club materials, were you?
Yeah, I wrote some of those, the first Scratch projects. And yes, that was a deliberate choice, that you start off with a set of instructions so they can get something working quite quickly, and then you prod them to go off and do their own thing. And that works quite well, because I had a girl in my Code Club a couple of weeks ago, and she made a version of Flappy Bird, Code Club Bird. Yeah. But she wanted a penguin, and she wanted it purple, and she wanted it to be a simple game as an introduction to Flappy Parrot. And she made those choices quite deliberately, and she was really proud of the fact that the game she ended up with was her game, and it was different from everybody else's. It was hers. She built it. She had her vision, and she'd gone off and done it, and she found that really rewarding.
Yeah, that's something that's really nice about Scratch, isn't it? That you can remix other people's projects, so you can take something and make it your own, and keep modifying it until you're happy with it. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and we've got Joy. Joy has joined us, I think. Are you there, Joy? Oh, she's gone away again. She was there for a moment. Okay. Where are we up to? Sway. Where would you recommend people would start in teaching programming?
I guess once you've got the hook, I always do the hook, so everyone else has kind of talked about that. So giving them an inspiration educational idea, whether that's showing them a video of a project or a game or something like that. I tend to do a lot of the sort of unplugged activities to get us started. So this can be as simple as breaking down a task they do every day into its small steps to really make them recognize that even something that seems relatively simple has a lot of stages to it. So one of the things my class really liked was we did an algorithm for stacking our chairs, which is on our wall to remind us where to stack our chairs at the end of the day, which surprised me because they honestly go on about this lesson loads and loads and loads. So they started off with just, well, it's easy. You pick up your chair, you walk to the front of the room, and then you put it down. However, that meant they walked into several tables on their way there. And then we looked at, okay, well, we need to repeat that 32 times. Is it the same for everyone? Because everyone has a different amount of spaces to walk to get their chair to the front. So then how could they write a piece of an algorithm that would work for everyone without them having to have a separate program for each person in the room? So we got quite complex, but the computational thinking that was going on was really quite substantial as they were trial and erroring and they were debugging and they were going, that doesn't quite work and this needs adapting. And that kind of real world example, now when we go into using things like Scratch, we think back to that and go, okay, so what did we actually have to do first? And we had to look at it one step at a time and think about that. And how did we go back to it and change it? And it works quite nicely as something to refer back to as a skill rather than mixing that up necessarily with the programming straight away.
So I can imagine that an algorithm for the whole class stacking chairs must have been really quite complicated. I wonder whether you had loops and repetition and conditional statements and all that kind of thing in your algorithm by the time you got it to work.
We did by the end. So we cheated a little bit. So we said, like, you have to walk with your chair to the aisle, because then it didn't matter if you sat on the left or the right-hand side of the aisle. But they had conditionals. They had, if there are 5 chairs in the stack already, then you need to make a new pile, otherwise you add it to the top. And then we tried to loop through it 32 times. It took, the whole class sort of came up with our own ideas and then we started putting it together. But yeah, there was a lot of just the discussion of the computational ideas and things like that. It was a really insightful lesson into how much they understood about breaking a problem down and really thinking like a computer in the very specific manner that a computer works in.
So again, we're thinking about the computational thinking aspects of it, aren't we? I wonder whether, so perhaps thinking about people starting out again, where would you go from there then in order to extend those skills? If you were a beginner and not too confident about teaching programming, how could you go from the unplugged algorithms, perhaps simple algorithms, you've taken to a more complicated algorithm there, where would you suggest people jump in?
So you kind of, well, we do it completely separately. So we wouldn't then take the stacking the chairs onto the screen, but then we would start with a simple game. So it might be getting a character to walk a certain route. Well, just like we've done with our carrying of chairs, you've then taken it to walking that certain route. By the time we've introduced concepts like loops and conditionals, we've done quite a lot of work on algorithms. Your first algorithm could be as simple as, I need to leave the classroom, how do I do that? Or I'm going to draw this picture and my friend has to be able to do it. So those sort of things you can start replicating straight away. I wouldn't introduce all those concepts at once. You've got to work your way up to that, getting a more complex idea each time.
So I'm wondering whether you would suggest that people would get hooked on making a game or get hooked on making an animation, and then you would pull the computational skills in, or whether you start out by saying, I'm going to teach these computational thinking skills or these computational skills today, and then go towards the activity.
I think you always need a hook, and the programming in the games is a very substantial hook. You've got the excitement, you've got, I want to make this happen. Then you may need to say to them, okay, but we need to take a few steps back. Before we get to that point, what do we need to understand? Because usually the games the children think of, or at least my children, they want all these fantastic things. They want 6 levels, and they want a boss monster that's going to come and burn everything down, and then you've got to do this and this and this. But they start off with this brilliant idea that's really exciting, and they can't necessarily backtrack into, right, what do you need to do first? Let's work on level 1 before we get to level 628.
Yeah, so part of it is about managing their expectations of what they can do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without trying to put them off as well.
Sorry, was that Kim?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, you don't want to put them off though as well, do you? If they've got these amazing ideas, you don't want to say, well, you can't do that. You've got to try and get them as close to that as you can, haven't you?
Which is what's quite nice about the Code Club ideas, because they stay in a certain genre of project for a while, and they learn the skills. So if you're doing gaming, you learn all the skills that you need to make games, and you'd only work with the blocks that you need for gaming, perhaps. So you learn how to keep a score, you learn how to manage enemies, you learn how to make characters move. But if you're doing a different type of making a different type of artifact with Scratch, you would use different blocks and different skills. Would you agree with that, Neil?
Yeah, and that, again, that was quite deliberate. And at the end of the first set of Code Club projects, it's deliberately set up as make your own game, because they've got these this repertoire of tricks.
Yeah.
As you said, it's, keeping a score, having a level, having characters move, keyboard input, mouse input. They've got those bits, and they can put them together into a game. So it's that idea of a higher level of composition. Rather than just putting blocks together, it's putting together more like recipes.
Yeah, but they've learned the separate bits first.
Yeah.
So if you're working with music, again, you would learn a different set of skills.
Yeah.
Okay, well, come to Wayne, who had a tour of Wayne's garden there. Are you going in the playhouse, Wayne?
Yes, I'm back in there in a moment.
So have you been able to follow what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I've been listening.
Yes.
So
does that strike a chord with your approach then?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we're kind of in a kind of transition really. We had quite a few teachers who lacked confidence in teaching it. So on your recommendation, really, we invested in Purple Mash, which has been very useful so far. We're using that in Key Stage 1 at the moment, and it's working really well. I mean, I've told teachers not to be scared of going back to the basics just to get started, and it's a case really of those teachers learning how to use it themselves. Before, because a lot of the children do know a lot more than the adults in our school. Everybody said that, but as Stacey said, we are looking at using GamePress this term for our Year 5s and 6s. We've done Scratch, now. They've shown that they're capable of using it. And debugging and things like that. So but as Sway said as well, it's just about taking it slow steps and then having something that's achievable at the end, really. So we're going to have a look at GamePress and possibly Scratch Junior as well. But it seems to be doing quite well at the minute. We're moving into looking at different things and hopefully getting a new area for computers as well. So it's very confident.
So you mentioned there about whether the teacher has to be the expert. What do you think about that? Does the teacher have to be the expert, or is it okay not to be the expert?
I mean, from coming into our school, we've got quite a decent set of digital leaders in our school.
Digital leaders, yeah.
Our digital leaders have been all over all Key Stages so far, and to be fair to teachers at our school, they're not afraid of children coming in and being the experts, really. Having 9 or 10-year-old children being able to do things that they can't, I think they've actually accepted that it's quite useful to have those children in there, to be honest, which I think is a definite step in the right direction.
And Stacey and Sway, you've also got digital leaders, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yep. Do you find that? But I suppose you're quite expert. What about the people in your school who are not so expert? Do they make use of digital leaders?
Yeah, for me, definitely. We ran it a bit differently. Last year I ran it as one cohort of about 10 children, and they stay for the whole year, and they sort of trained up in Scratch and HTML coding and sort of filming. But this year I've run it as workshops, so rather than 10 or 11 children, I've actually got through about 40 children from 4, 5 and 6, so they're little mini experts in different areas, and so that they can get called out of lessons, and it's not so much of a burden on just sort of 10 children. You've got 6 in this area and 6 or 7 in that area, so
you've got some who are Scratch experts and some who are experts in other aspects.
Yeah, so we've got Raspberry Pi experts, we've got Minecraft programming experts, we've got HTML coding experts and Scratch experts as well, and we tend to have about 7 or 8 children in each of those groups, from 4, 5 and 6. So and we kind of say to teachers, you know, they're there if you want them, let me know, and they come into the lessons and they tend to stay for about 30 minutes. And I think it just gives those teachers that boost that if something goes wrong, there's you know, 6 or 7 other teachers in the room to help and support.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. And do you do a similar thing, Sway?
I've now got 19 digital leaders, which is slightly too many. So they've also kind of broken off into smaller groups, which they chose themselves what they wanted to be an expert in to allow us to spread the skills that they have. As I've done a bit more of they do some TAing in lessons. They've also been making resources. Anything from something like in year 2, they wanted a Bebop map to do with the theme of Africa. So they drew some African animals in it and created 4 or 5 maps instead of us having to buy them. They also do help videos, and what's been really useful this year is they've been running clubs for me after school. So they ran a Scratch club in September to Christmas, and they've run Raspberry Pi clubs and different things like that, which is also then skilling up a group of year 3-4 children who attend those clubs. It's extra pairs of hands and extra children within a class that can be useful for teachers to support them with programming.
That does sound good. So still thinking about support then, I wonder if we could just spend a little bit of time thinking about ways in which we support children at different stages with computing. So in any one class you're going to have some children who are real whiz kids with computing and some who need more support. What kind of strategies do you all use for supporting in class? Perhaps if we could start with Kim, who is working with children with special needs. What would you say was the best strategies you've had for supporting different levels of learners within your class?
I would say we do a lot of buddying up in the class. So we'll sort of group the children by their levels, and they have quite different tasks to do within that. So I'm not trying to get all the children to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But at different levels, sometimes what they're doing is completely different. So we do that, and we also make sure that they all have a lot of visual support, because they need that visual support in all their learning. So they use the same visuals when they're doing computing as they would in, say, literacy and maths and other areas.
Yeah, that sounds good. And there are those printable Scratch blocks, aren't there? Have you used those? Have you used the laminated Scratch blocks so you can put together your code before you run it?
Yeah, they've been quite helpful.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything to add about supporting children?
I would say that, so I don't tend to limit mine. Whilst I teach them a skill, so say we're working on a specific area, whether that's loops or whether that's something we've done computational thinking-wise, one thing my children have said is really important in their opinion to a computing lesson is that they're allowed to make a project of their own choosing. So I don't say they have to make a game or they have to do music or they have to do whatever. They can do something that shows whatever we are learning. So if we've been learning loops, then it needs to include a loop in it. But how they implement that loop is entirely up to them. So they really like the freedom, and that allows for differentiation of itself, because I've got those children who will then go off and have nested loops and be doing several different levels and explaining exactly why it's there, and I'll have someone who will do something more like a dance routine where it just forever loops the same thing and you can see a character moving in that way. So I think that's been quite useful, that they didn't want the restraints, and I've not said to them this group of children have to do this and this group of children have to do that. They've had an ability to kind of challenge themselves, and having challenge cards, I have challenge cards in hand to say, well, now you've done that, try something like this, to give them next steps, but they're not limited to a specific set of instructions or a specific scenario that you want them to create.
So working within a theme, giving them a lot of freedom to develop their own ownership over their route through it, and supported with extensions as well. That sounds good. Anybody else got anything else to say about support or differentiation?
I'll speak, can I?
Okay.
I mean, we spoke about this before. The school in our catchment area, the thing we struggle with most was there's so many children who don't have access to computers at home where we are. So we tend to have problems in terms of some have never done. I mean, some in year 5 and year 6 have never touched Scratch before until this year, whereas some of them have been playing Minecraft and things like that for about 4 probably. So we've got that kind of issue. Luckily, we've got some good computer staff in school, as in TAs, who do support really well. And we tend to have in a computing lesson in 5/6 anyway, myself or the other year 6 teacher and 2 TAs in the room at the same time, because buddying up is a good idea, but trying to get around everybody and trying to get them a decent starting point is, I think that's the most important for us to start off with. That's the problem we have. Luckily, and I think Dave probably agree with this, you've got to have a really supportive head, to be able to get things going. Because otherwise, if you haven't got that support, then you are struggling at the time.
Yes, that's it's really important to have the backing there. Okay, so I wondered whether it might be a good idea to also to think about how you've used computing, where it sits in relation to other subjects in your curriculum. So do you feel that computing should be a cross-curricular tool, or do you feel it should be just something that is taught for itself, for its own sake? So how much is it discrete computing, and how much are you trying to embed it in the primary curriculum? And how much do you think that differs between primary and perhaps in secondary, where it's likely to be taught in a much more discrete approach? Shall we just say anybody who has something to say? That's Kim. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think what we try to do is we try to teach the skills within their computing session, but we then try to, and what I've tried to do is sort of give teachers in the school suggestions of how to use those skills within other lessons. So especially, I mean, there's quite a few links now with the maths curriculum changing. There's a lot of position and direction work that sort of links back to computing, and we try to do a lot in our geography and history, a lot of green screen work to try and make that a bit more fun for them, and just trying to use lots of different skills like story writing. We'll do animation to support our story writing. There's lots of ways you can use those skills in different subjects, I think.
And again, sticking with a very visual approach, isn't it? If you're supporting through those approaches.
Yeah.
Does anybody else do cross-curricular computing?
I've used it in maths, like Kim was saying, so to do with angles. So we taught the concept of different types of angles, and they had to show me their understanding using Scratch. And then we've also used it as a sort of a tool for them just to show their understanding of especially theme lessons, so show me your understanding of the Bronze Age or the Stone Age, or and sometimes children will choose to make a poster or a game, but they're asking now to go onto Scratch and make some sort of quiz or make a game.
So Scratch is just one of the options they're choosing then. That's interesting. So they might say, I'm going to show mine as an animation, I'm going to show mine as a Scratch game.
Yeah, and they've really enjoyed that. And then the thing that we've been doing with the Game Press now and the Scratch games, we're hoping now to make some sort of DT project where we sort of explore mechanisms and pulleys and gears and try to make one of their levels come to life. So make a 3D model of it and try and make, because some of their blocks move and some of their characters jump, so can we try and recreate that using DT skills? So and we've also used it in art as well with some watercolours. So just to kind of inspire them that way as well.
Yeah, so there's something about already being interested in a topic, isn't there, and then pursuing your computer skills through that interest. Any other examples of cross-curricular computing?
One that I'm sort of planning in my head, although I've not got around to doing yet. I kind of am looking at tying in the sort of DT. So we do a fairgrounds unit, which lots of schools used to do. I think it might be the Remnants and Old QTA unit. And the children in DT have a motor, and out of wood and glue and stuff, they build a fairground ride. Well, using the sort of physical computing aspects, I'm looking at attaching LEDs to their fairground ride, so they can get a kind of twinkling light thing that you get at fairgrounds, and maybe even adding in some programming of music and using something like Sonic Pi to program some music to get the annoying fairground tunes as well. So that's sort of something that we're we're in the process of building into the curriculum. So they can already control LEDs and they can do all these things separately. Like Kim said, having the discrete computing lessons to teach the skills that you're trying to achieve, but then to work towards a larger project where you say, what would you actually like to happen? Would you like a button press to cause your motor to go? Right, well that's where we bring in the computing part, because you get more of the control and you can start to explore beyond just, well, the light comes on and the light comes off. Do you want it to flicker? Do you want it to go in sequence? What do you want to happen?
And there becomes a real need to make it work, doesn't there, because of your project and the fairground and so on. That sounds excellent. So we mentioned physical computing there. I wonder whether we could go along the line again, and perhaps if we finish by everybody talking about their favourite approach to physical computing, so controlling physical devices. Do you think that's important? Do you think that's worthwhile? And it is going to be our theme next week in the MOOC, so perhaps we could just have a little bit of a think about that. Claire, are you still there, or have you left? I'm not sure if Claire is still
Claire
there.
has left.
She has left. Okay, so it's Kim. We'll go back to Kim again. Then, do you do anything with anything that combines physical devices with computing? Kim?
We do use the Bbots a fair bit. What we tend to do is we tend to use, when we introduce the topic, we use our own bodies to guide round, and then we'll move on to using those skills to move the Bbots around, and they seem to gain more of an understanding having used themselves and sort of given each other those directions. They can then apply that to the Bbots. So we do use those a fair bit across the school, and we're looking at buying an iSpy tank as well.
An iSpy? I haven't seen that. What's that? An iSpy tank?
It's got a webcam on it, so you can sort of guide it around, and it's got the webcam on it as well, so you can see.
That sounds good. How do you spell it? Is it just iSpy tank? I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was.
That sounds really good. So what about, are you also looking at the blue bots, the latest Bbots?
I've had a look at them. Yeah, I've not had to go with them. I think it'd be better to them out, see what.
Yeah, I think it's worth having a look, because you can have them working with an iPad, and you can program on the iPad first and test it out before you make it the actual Bbots move. And you can also take an image of a real environment, so an obstacle course on the floor, and have that and program it on the iPad, so you can have the iPad Bbot moving around. So that's quite good. Yeah. Okay, so do you think there's something to be said for having real devices then?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, like we do it as a stepping stone, and then we'd look at on-screen programming after that. So it sort of goes in a sequence. Yeah.
So whether you're working from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 2, perhaps thinking about directional programming off the screen, directional programming with real objects, and then directional programming on the screen.
Yeah, definitely.
And there are some lovely apps and tools, aren't there, for doing directional programming on a screen. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Neil, you're quite into physical computing, aren't you?
Yeah. I've got all sorts of bits. I mean, some of it is more suitable for using things like Arduinos and breadboards and things. Is probably more suitable for secondary, simply because it's fiddly and takes some time. But I've used Makey Makey in co-clubs. And
tell us just a little bit about Makey Makeys.
Makey Makey is a small board, and you plug it into a USB port, and it pretends to be a keyboard. And you connect various clock clips to the end, and if you make a circuit, then it's like a key press, and you hook it up to something like Scratch, and that can make things happen in response to the key presses. So one of the classic ones is the banana piano. You have a bunch of bananas, and as you press each banana, it plays a different note on the piano and stuff like that. And you can use that for game controllers and things like that. And so kids have loads of fun with that, because it's immediate, it's fun, and it's quite different. It's something that they're not used to computers working. They're used to seeing the computer as something in a box that sits on the side, and not be something that's tangible when they get their hands on and that kind of thing. So that change can quite often get them excited. So Makey is a good thing.
Yes, I think if you haven't seen Makey's, you should Google Makey's
Yeah.
and have those. They are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a new Makey as well, isn't there, that they're bringing in?
They're kickstarting a light version now.
Yeah.
The other one I've done is using some hardware that we've built in the OU, but you can do it with other things, especially like the Makey, is just using them as game controllers. So I've run a workshop for some Key Stage 3 kids where they spend an hour, they build a little video game, and they use some physical controls as a to control the game. It's a little shooting game, and they have a slider to move the target, and they shout bang at it to make it fire a gun, and then they get going. You get a room full of kids shouting at their computers, and they're having loads of fun.
Yeah, so physical computing with older children as well then, just as important.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Stacey, what do you do with, you've got Raspberry Pis in your classroom, haven't you?
Well, we've got sticks in the school that we've set up. It's probably an area that I'd like to develop a little bit further with the children, but we had a STEM week where we looked at physical computing, and we looked at how to program LED lights on a Raspberry Pi, and then we played with the Makeys as well. And what was quite interesting about those was just the imagination that came from them, and the things that they wanted to program and to set up using the Makeys. But then very quickly they then wanted to use that with their own Scratch games. So they kind of got past the tangerine keyboards and the bongo chairs and thought, well, actually I want to make a game where I can use this tool as well. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, so you're moving to. Can you talk a little bit about how you get them to be aspirational with physical computing then, rather than just having a little bit of fun with it, trying to do something a little bit more serious with it? That's what the kind of thing you seem to be doing during your STEM week with the Makeys.
Well, we were talking specifically about the STEM week. We wanted to, we took some design thinking principles and thought about solving real life problems of the school. So the children went and surveyed their schoolmates and found out things that children didn't like about their learning, and then they wanted to solve the problems, and so this was a way of just introducing, well, can you try and incorporate this physical computing in whatever solution you had made? So some children had wanted to make a pen that helped you with your handwriting, and were thinking about making LED lights when you did a join correctly, so it would go green. So it's something they couldn't actually make in the week that we got, but then they started to think about, well, I'd need to know this skill. So then we sort of gave them those skills, and then it just got their imaginations on fire, really.
So part of that is being hooked by the problem and having the drive to solve the problem, isn't it? And part of that, I suppose, is the real-world application of what you're inventing. They were making inventions that would make a difference in the real world.
Yeah, and it all came from them. So nothing was contrived, nothing was sort of dictated to them, and then they could then see computing as being the creative subject that it truly is. So that's what I kind of liked about that week.
Yeah, so an emphasis on the thinking skills as well then.
Yeah.
And Sway, you also like Raspberry Pis, don't you?
I do, and I'm slightly biased because I've been at Pi Academy for the last 2 days. But
have you?
Yes, I've just.
What have you been doing at Pi Academy?
Loads and loads of things. But a lot of the second day of Pi Academy is all about teachers. It's teachers that attend, but exploring a project that they've got an idea for and making it happen. And I think that's a really powerful thing. Like Stacey was saying, with them having something they want to achieve. So one of the sort of introductory ways I've done with physical computing is holding up a button, as in just a button, and saying, right, what's going to happen when I press this button? And you'd be amazed. It'll start with like, oh, a light will come on, and your very simple things, and then suddenly it starts to grow to, well, this could happen and this could happen, and that's been a really interesting way in. I'm going to do some more sort of with this. So one of the best ideas we had was. Well, I think that if you turn the button into a plunger, and then you could blow up TNT in Minecraft, and you could have this huge explosion, but you've done that in the physical world that has then interacted with the on-screen environment of Minecraft. So that was really nice because they were combining their knowledge of programming and of using programs like Minecraft and adding in the physical side of things.
So that's not too difficult to do something in the physical world that works in Minecraft.
Yeah, so you
sounds good.
Build with TNT blocks. You can either physically put them in like you do with Minecraft, or you can program it to appear in a certain way because it's quicker if you do it that way, whichever the children prefer. But then it's just a case of your button press is making Steve hit a block, which causes the TNT to explode. So it's very simple in that sense, but there were dramatic effects because, you know, who doesn't like explosion?
So something very rewarding about actually pressing the physical button and something happening. Yeah, something dramatic happening. Yeah, good. And Wayne, what's your passion for physical computing? You've got some fantastic robots in your classroom, haven't you?
Yeah. I don't have them, to be honest, but me and the deputy head went to bet last year and spent about £5 on them, which was an interesting conversation when we got back with the head teacher, but he kind of got back on board with it. Yeah,
they're the Lego. Are they the Lego EV3s?
Yeah, we also got Lego WeDo as well. We haven't used the WeDo stuff yet, but we are going to be using that in 3-4 next year. Just trying to get our head around it really at the minute. We have done we did 2 terms with the EV3 robots. The kids absolutely love them. Again, trying to set up real problems with them. That start off with. We have got Makey Makers as well. We've got Raspberry Pis as well. So yeah, it's been pretty good. We're also getting in Scott, who came to our last Teach Meet. Obviously the primary computing group rather. He's going to come in next year and we're going to do some jump box as well. So hopefully Raspberry Pi. So we are slowly getting there, but we've got lots of ideas. We have used this stuff now. It's getting used the other stuff as well. Really, we have invested a lot of money into it. So hopefully it's going to be successful.
So the EV3s, then, do you tend to give them? You tend to set the children a challenge. Can you solve this challenge, or do you get the children to set challenges for themselves?
We started off with setting challenges for them, and then they started, to move on to some of, obviously not all the children, but some of them were then setting their own challenges and working out how to do it, independently. But obviously starting off, we needed to be a little bit more, less independent really, because they'd never used stuff like that before. I mean, just looking at the Lego stuff is the hook for them really. Who doesn't love Lego?
Who doesn't love Lego? Yeah. Okay, so next week then in the MOOC we will be looking at physical computing as a theme in itself. So more about that next week. I wonder if we could finish with perhaps one top tip from everybody. I don't want to put you on the spot, but one for people perhaps not so confident who haven't been doing computing for a long time. What would your top tip be for making it work? If we come back to Kim. I always get to as well.
I think I would probably just say, don't be afraid. Let the children just go with their ideas and see where it takes you. If it all goes a bit wrong, it all goes a bit wrong. But I'd say
we learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know where it will take you, so
take risks. Yeah. See where you get to. Yes, that's a good one. What would you say, Neil?
And the question that I found really powerful when teaching computing is when someone gets stuck, you always ask them, well, what do you want it to do? And you'll find in a lot of cases they don't really know. So they can't build something if they haven't worked out what it is they want it to do. So just get them to think about what they want to happen, and then it's quite often obvious what the next step should be.
Yeah, so that's to do with decomposing the problem, isn't it? I guess. So
yeah,
have a clear idea of what the problem is, what step of the problem you're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And Stacey, what would your top tip be?
Maybe to explore the unplugged resources that are around. There's so many, and I found that that's been a really good source of getting teachers on board as well in my school, and to make them realise that some of the concepts that we're applying to computing, we teach already through unplugged activities like like algorithms are toolkits, and we want children to apply logical reasoning because we want them to be independent thinkers and learners. So once they've got their head around that, teachers kind of are a bit more on board with teaching it.
Yes, and realising that we are doing a lot of it already across the primary curriculum, aren't we? Yeah, and there were some fantastic unplugged ideas on week 2 of the MOOC. There were lots and lots of ideas on the Google community, which was really lovely. So yes, I think the unplugged is really important. Sway, what would your top tip be?
I think it would always be like, leave some time for exploration. When the first time you do anything, you kind of want to press all the buttons and see what happens. And if you go in like, no, we're all going to do this first, I think that's a very quick way to switch children off. So just give them, it doesn't have to be long, 5 minutes, and go, right, see what it does.
See what it does.
Have that exploration time, and then move on to what you actually intended to do during the lesson.
Yeah, that's a good tip. And Wayne?
That is a good tip. I'm going to try that. This is a tip or a bit of advice for you. The one thing you can't afford to do, I think, is try and do everything by yourself, because it is impossible. You just got to try and get as many teachers on board as you can, and just keep going at them. Like I say, we've got a very supportive head, so I've run quite a few staff meetings, and I think people now are starting to understand that computing is not that scary once you get into it.
And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I put a link to our YouTube channel. That's mostly stuff from my class, but there are other teachers now getting involved with it, and it is working really well. So yeah, just keep persevering.
So a team effort.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we ought to stop there. But a very big thank you to all of you for coming and joining us. It was a really interesting chat, and more next week at the same time, I hope. And next week we're going to discuss technology across the curriculum. So not just computer programming, but how we can embed all kinds of uses of technology to support other subjects and still be creative with computers. Okay, so thank you very much. See you all next week.